Okay, let's go. Number 1. The Chinkana Grande, Sacsayhuaman, Peru. The year is 1923, and a man who knows these tunnels is walking in circles beneath the fortress of Sacsayhuaman. He was a local guide. He had entered through a low-cut opening in the hillside, the known access point to a passage system that almost no one who understood what it was entered alone. He had been inside before. He did not come back out. He was the most recent in a series. Spanish colonial administrator Francisco López de Gomara had written about the tunnels in 1552, in Historia General de las Indias, describing passages connecting the fortress to the Coricancha, the great Inca sun temple at the center of Cusco. The distance between the two structures is approximately 2 kilometers. López de Gomara documented the tunnels from accounts given by Spanish soldiers who had entered them in the decades after the conquest. Some of those soldiers, he noted, had not returned from the deeper sections. In 1924, the Peruvian government issued a formal decree. The main known entrance to the Chinkana Grande, the Great Labyrinth, was sealed. The official language cited public safety. Municipal records from Cusco give a more direct account. The tunnels had taken people, and the government had decided it could not be responsible for how many more they would take. The decree stands today. No organized archaeological expedition has been granted access to the interior. The Peruvian Ministry of Culture classifies tunnel exploration proposals as high-risk cultural heritage activities, requiring a sequence of approvals that has not been completed for any applicant since 1923. The ban is more than 100 years old. What lies beneath Sacsayhuaman is not entirely unknown. Ground-penetrating radar surveys by researchers at the Universidad Nacional de San Antonio, Abad del Cusco, in 2000 and 2008 mapped void spaces at depths of 12 to 15 meters beneath the fortress. The voids are larger than the known tunnel sections. They are inconsistent with natural geological features in tuff of this type. Some void signatures indicate rectangular geometry, the kind of shape that stone does not form on its own. The surface structures at Sacsayhuaman are among the most precisely engineered stonework in the ancient world. Polygonal blocks, weighing up to 130 metric tons, fit together without mortar, to tolerances measured in fractions of a millimeter. No two blocks are the same shape. Each was individually cut to interlock with its neighbors. The joints are tight enough that no modern tool can be inserted between them. The briefly explored sections of the Chinkana, documented in early 20th century accounts before the sealing, describe wall surfaces with no visible tool, marks the same unexplained smoothness that characterizes the above-ground construction, the same precision no one has replicated. The mainstream view is straightforward. The Inca built underground networks for ritual use, storage, and movement between sacred sites. The Chinkana served as a passage between the fortress and the religious center of Cusco. The disappearances reflect the genuine danger of unmapped corridors where disorientation becomes inescapable without light or landmarks. The 1923 ban reflects responsible heritage management. But some researchers ask questions the mainstream view does not fully address. The tunnel surfaces show a finish inconsistent with the bronze and stone tools documented in Inca construction contexts. The void spaces at 15 meters depth are larger than any functional connecting passage would require. And in more than 100 years, not one funded, authorized archaeological survey of the interior has been granted. Every other major Andean heritage site has been excavated, catalogued, and opened to controlled study. The Chinkana remains sealed with language written in 1923 that no one has been asked to revise. The guide, found in 1923, was recovered near the entrance, disoriented, unable to account for the hours between entering and emerging. He described the passages as identical in every direction. He did not go back in. Not everyone who entered before the sealing was found at all. Why does the ban stand after 100 years, when radar has confirmed chambers that no one has examined? What is in the void spaces at 15 meters depth where signatures suggest rectangular geometry? And what does it mean that the most precisely engineered stonework in the ancient world sits directly above passages that no authorized researcher has been permitted to enter in living memory? From a tunnel system where people entered and never returned, we travel to a cave where the government did not just seal the entrance, it confiscated what was found inside. Number 2. Cueva de los Tallos, Ecuador. The year is 1972, and a Hungarian-Ecuadorian explorer named János Moric is standing before a notary in Guayaquil, signing a legal document about something he found in the jungle. This is not a story. A notarial act carries the same evidentiary weight as a sworn statement in a legal proceeding. Moric describes a complex of underground chambers in the Cordillera del Condor region of the Ecuadorian Amazon, accessible through a cave entrance the indigenous Shuar have known about for generations. Inside, he states, walls are lined with metal tablets engraved in an unknown script. There is a library made of metal. A garden of life-size plants and animals made from precious metals. A repository of knowledge from a civilization that predates anything in the known archaeological record. The document is filed in the civil registry of Guayaquil. Whatever Moric believed he had found, he was willing to sign his name to it before a court officer. Cueva de los Tallos, the cave of the oilbirds, is named for the tallos that nest in large colonies in the upper chambers. Tallos are one of the few birds in the world that echolocate in darkness. They navigate by sound where light does not reach. The cave extends 4.8 kilometers of mapped passages. The deepest documented sections descend 200 meters below the jungle surface. Chambers more than 100 meters across have ceilings lost in the dark above any portable light source. In 1973, Eric von Daniken published Gold of the Gods, describing Moric's account. The book sold millions. The cave became famous. And in 1976, a 100-person British-Ecuadorian scientific expedition arrived with extensive equipment and a guest whose presence still reframes how this story gets told. Neil Armstrong was 45. He had walked on the surface of the moon 7 years earlier. The expedition's British organizer, Stanley Hall, invited him for one reason. If Neil Armstrong stood in a chamber full of metal tablets, the world could not dismiss it. Armstrong agreed. He spent 2 months inside Cueva de los Tallos. The expedition found large, unmapped chambers beyond the documented sections. They found evidence of human habitation at 200 meters depth, stone tools, processed organic material, indicators of sustained use. They found pre-Columbian artifacts consistent with Shuar cultural material. The scale was genuine. The chambers were significant. They did not find the metal library. In 1979, the Ecuadorian government transferred management to the Shuar indigenous community and simultaneously placed the site under a restriction order, prohibiting private archaeological expeditions without military escort. The stated reason was cultural heritage protection and indigenous territorial rights. The practical effect was the end of independent research access. The restriction has been renewed under every successive Ecuadorian administration since. Stanley Hall did not accept this. He spent the remaining decades of his life attempting to organize a return with full access to the inner sections. He wrote letters, made applications, petitioned through diplomatic channels. He believed the metal library existed in sections the 1976 expedition had not reached. He died in 2008 without returning. His research archive, including notes from the unmapped inner chambers, is held by his family and has not been made public. Expeditions in 2012 and 2016 by Scottish researchers gained access to the upper chambers only. Both teams reported that the passages continue beyond permitted sections and showed no evidence of having been explored in any documented expedition. The mainstream interpretation holds that no metal library exists, that Moric was mistaken or fabricating, and that the restriction is a legitimate preservation and indigenous rights measure. The 1976 expedition found nothing to support the claim. The chamber contents Moric described are not consistent with any known pre-Columbian tradition. But some researchers ask questions the dismissal does not address. A notarial act is a legal risk. Moric knew the document would remain in the civil registry. He signed it anyway. And the inner sections, the passages beyond what the 1976 expedition reached, the sections every subsequent expedition has been turned back from, have never been formally surveyed. Whatever is in those passages is not known. The restriction ensures it stays that way. What was Moric willing to legally declare that he had found? Why has every expedition since 1976 been restricted to the same outer sections the original team documented? And what is in the passages below 200 meters that no authorized researcher has been permitted to enter in more than 45 years? From a cave where a government locked the door after a major expedition found something it could not explain, We enter a cave where Thai authorities sealed the sections the entire world watched rescuers enter and never opened them again. Number 3. Tham Luang Cave, Thailand. The sealed chambers beyond the rescue zone. The year is 2018, and the entire world is watching a cave in Chiang Rai province. On June 23rd, 12 members of a youth football team and their assistant coach became trapped inside the Tham Luang Nang Non cave system by rising floodwaters. The rescue that followed over 17 days involved more than 10,000 people from 100 countries. All 13 were brought out alive. The world celebrated. Then it moved on. What the world did not discuss was what lay beyond the chambers where the boys were found. Tham Luang Nang Non is a 10.3-kilometer cave system. The rescue operation occupied less than 3 kilometers of it. The boys were located in Chamber 9, approximately 2.5 kilometers from the entrance, at the end of a flooded passage that took experienced cave divers hours to navigate. Chamber 9 was a dry, elevated pocket. It was not the end of the cave. During the initial search, Thai Navy SEAL diving teams went ahead of the rescue party to survey the full accessible extent of the passage. They were mapping what was there. Their notes were incorporated into a government report prepared by the Thai Department of National Parks, Wildlife, and Plant Conservation, and partially declassified in 2019. The report describes, in bureaucratic understatement, additional chambers of significant size extending beyond Chamber 9, accessible only via diving. In November 2018, a post-rescue survey team entered the cave to assess damage and document current conditions. The team included archaeologists. One was Sudis Pipatpathakorn of Chiang Mai University. At a 2020 academic conference, Pipatpathakorn presented findings from that survey, describing prehistoric paintings in the intersections, animal figures, geometric symbols, an artistic tradition consistent with Pleistocene-era rock art, potentially dating to between 15,000 and 40,000 years ago. His account was corroborated in the same conference proceedings by geomorphologist Wiesen Suraprasit of Kasetsart University, who noted sediment deposits in the inner chambers consistent with periodic flooding patterns extending back to the Pleistocene. Those conference presentations have not been published in peer-reviewed journals. The paintings cannot be independently verified because access to the inner sections has not been granted to independent researchers. In 2019, the Thai Department of National Parks formally restricted access to all cave sections beyond Chamber 7, including Chamber 9, where the boys survived. The stated reason is preservation. The rescue caused significant damage to cave formations. Further traffic would cause irreversible harm. This is a legitimate conservation position. Cave formations are genuinely fragile, but the preservation argument applied to Pleistocene rock art works in a specific direction. If the paintings exist, and there is no reason to doubt an academic archaeologist presenting at a university conference, backed by a geomorphologist citing sediment data, then the cave contains evidence of human occupation stretching back potentially 40,000 years. People were here in the Pleistocene, before the sea levels rose and covered the land that is now the Gulf of Thailand. They went underground. They left marks. The world watched the most globally witnessed cave rescue in history and pointed every camera at one end of the cave. The other end has prehistoric paintings and a government restriction order. The Thai government's November 2018 survey covered sections whose full extent has not been made public. The 2019 restriction covers everything beyond Chamber 7. The full findings of the post-rescue archaeological survey remain unpublished. The 10.3-kilometer cave has been accessed in its entirety by exactly one group, the post-rescue survey team. What is in the sections of Tham Luang, beyond Chamber 9, in the kilometers of passage that no camera has ever reached? How old are the paintings that two separate Thai researchers described in 2020? And why does the most thoroughly internationally observed cave rescue in history end with the cave more sealed than it was before the rescue began? From a modern cave sealed after a global rescue, we descend into tunnels, sealed not after a rescue, but after evidence of what a 2,300-year-old civilization did to the people inside them. Number 4. Chavin de Huantar, Peru, the Sealed Galleries. The year is 2001, and a Stanford University research team has entered a section of tunnel in the Peruvian Andes that has not been opened in approximately 2,200 years. Chavin de Huantar, in the Ancash region, at 3,180 meters altitude, was the ceremonial center of the Chavin civilization, one of the oldest complex societies in the Andes, built between 900 and 200 BCE. The gallery system inside the main mound is 2 kilometers of interconnected stone-lined passages running at multiple levels, descending in places to 12 meters below the mound surface, not natural caves. Built. Stone slabs forming walls and ceilings of passages used for approximately 700 years, then deliberately sealed, then forgotten, then rediscovered. John Rick of Stanford, who has led the most sustained modern excavation of the site, documented something about these galleries in 2008 that changes how they should be understood. The galleries are acoustically engineered. When a pututu, a conch shell trumpet, 20 of which were found buried in a pit at the site, is sounded inside, the sound reverberates between the parallel stone walls in a way that destroys directional information. A person in the passage cannot determine where the sound originates. It could be behind them, ahead, above, everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Acoustic engineer David Lubman, who collaborated with Rick's team, confirmed this is an engineered property of the passage geometry, not an accidental feature. Someone built a tunnel that makes it impossible to know where you are. In 2001, the team excavating Gallery 10 found evidence that made the acoustic engineering considerably more unsettling in context. Gallery 10 had been sealed with stone debris, not collapsed, deliberately blocked. When the team cleared it and entered, they found ceramic vessels at regular intervals along both walls. Chemical analysis identified 2 substances: San Pedro cactus, containing mescaline, Anadenanthera, whose seeds contain a DMT precursor compound, both potent hallucinogens, both placed in quantity, deliberately, along the walls of a passage designed to make it impossible to determine where sounds are coming from. There is a clinical logic to this sequence. The gallery produces disorientation, the vessels deliver chemical alteration. Whatever was experienced in this passage was experienced in a state of profound sensory unreliability in a stone corridor underground in the dark, not accidental, a system. Then the team found the bodies. 3 sections of Gallery 10 contained human skeletal remains. Bioarchaeologist John Verano of Tulane University analyzed the skeletal material and published a partial account in Andean Past in 2004. The remains were positioned face down, arms beneath the torsos, pressed against the stone floor, in a configuration inconsistent with post-mortem placement. The positioning of a body moved after death, and consistent with a living person's arms being pinned beneath their own body. Verano's phrasing was precise. The positioning of some individuals was not consistent with post-mortem placement. He did not elaborate in print. The specific details of Gallery 10's human remains were withheld from Rick's 2008 public report. The omission is noted in the methodology section with a reference to a separate, restricted analysis. 3 months after the 2001 excavation, the Peruvian Ministry of Culture sealed Galleries 10, 12, and 14. The inner sections, entered for the first time in modern history during the Stanford work, were reclosed. The access order has not been lifted. The mainstream view holds that Chavin was a pilgrimage and oracle center. The hallucinogenic vessels reflect documented Andean ritual practice. The acoustic design facilitated religious experience. The human remains represent ritual interments. The restriction protects the site from excavation damage. But some researchers ask what the face-down positioning means in the context of the rest of the evidence. The acoustic disorientation, the precisely placed hallucinogens, the sealed gallery that took 2,200 years to re-enter, bodies in positions that a living person would fall into, not a dead person would be placed in. What happened in Gallery 10 that has been withheld from the published record? What is in Galleries 12 and 14, sealed before they were fully excavated? And what did the Chavin civilization believe it was doing that required all of this to remain underground, sealed, for 2 millennia? From galleries where bodies suggest what happened to them was not burial, we travel to a site where the physical structure itself is the impossible thing. Number 5. Naupa Huaca, Peru. The year is 2015, and the Peruvian Ministry of Culture has issued a decree restricting public access to a carved stone structure on a cliff face above the sacred valley. The site had stood untouched for an unknown number of centuries. Hikers had visited it for decades. Researchers had photographed it. Nobody had damaged it. The cliff face is solid andesite volcanic rock with a Mohs hardness of 6 to 7, comparable to quartz. You cannot damage andesite by looking at it. The ministry's stated reason for the restriction is vulnerability to visitor impact. The structure at Naupa Huaca, also called Naupa Iglesia, sits on a nearly vertical cliff face in the Cusco region, 45 minutes by trail from Ollantaytambo, at approximately 3,800 meters altitude. No road, no platform. A narrow trail from the valley floor, and then the cliff, and then carved into the hardest rock in the region, a doorway, trapezoidal. Approximately 1.5 meters high, 0.7 meters wide. Vertical sides, horizontal top, 90-degree corners. The surface of the door frame is flat to tolerances visible to the naked eye. The stone is andesite. Cutting andesite to right angles with this surface precision requires, in modern industrial contexts, tungsten carbide or diamond-tipped equipment. The bronze and stone tools documented in Andean archaeological contexts cannot do this. This is not disputed. It is a measurement. The doorway leads inside. A carved niche, approximately 2 meters deep, with a corbelled vault ceiling, horizontal stone courses, progressively cantilevered inward until they meet at the top, creating a pointed arch without a keystone. Corbelled vaults appear in the Neolithic passage tombs of Orkney, the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta, and megalithic monuments of western France, all dating between 3000 and 5000 BCE. The corbelled vault at Naupa Huaca has not been dated by any published analysis. What is confirmed is that this construction technique is not documented in any pre-Columbian Andean architectural tradition. Not Inca. Not pre-Inca. Nowhere. On the wall opposite the doorway, a second carved element. A low rectangular recess, approximately 20 centimeters deep, with a uniformly concave surface. Not erosion. Not accidental. Shaped to hold something of matching convex profile. Nothing was found in the recess. Nothing was found anywhere in the structure. No artifacts, no debris, no tool remnants. Geologist Jesus Gamarra and archaeologist Fernando Salazar Pareja examined the site in 2013. Their finding was specific. The interior surfaces show no directional scoring, no tool marks in any direction at any scale. The finish is uniformly smooth in a way consistent with a polishing process, but inconsistent with any polishing method documented in Andean archaeology for this material at this altitude. The closest analog is the Barabar Caves in India, the same absence of directional marks, the same inexplicable uniformity, the same official restriction. The mainstream interpretation, where offered, holds that Naupa Huaca is a late Inca or pre-Inca ritual site. The trapezoidal form is consistent with Inca architectural vocabulary. The site may have been a huaca, a sacred place used for offerings. The restriction is standard heritage management, but some researchers ask whether this framing addresses the central problem. The trapezoidal doorway form is Inca. The corbelled vault is not. The surface finish cannot be produced by the tools documented in any Andean context. And the doorway leads into a niche 2 meters deep that holds nothing. The doorway goes nowhere. Whatever purpose this structure served, it was not a door you walked through. It was a door facing outward. Built to be approached, not entered. Built from the outside, for something on the outside, to face. Who built a doorway in rock too hard to carve using a technique that appears in Neolithic Europe but nowhere in pre-Columbian South America? What was supposed to sit in the concave recess, and where did it go? And why does a 2015 restriction order cite visitor impact for a structure carved into solid andesite that has stood unchanged for centuries? From a doorway with no known maker and no known purpose, we enter caves where the maker is documented, the purpose is documented, and the engineering was so far beyond what should have been possible that the caves themselves became a source of official discomfort. Number 6. The Barabar Caves, India. The year is 1961, and a survey team from the Archaeological Survey of India is documenting one of the oldest surviving rock-cut monuments in the world in the Barabar Hills of Bihar. The chamber they are measuring is Lomas Rishi, commissioned by Emperor Ashoka the Great around 250 BCE. The facade is carved into a granite hill, shaped into a representation of a wooden arched doorway, Whoever cut this entrance was translating timber architecture into stone with complete accuracy. Behind it, a chamber approximately 10 meters long, with polished walls. At the far end, a passage. The passage is approximately 1.2 meters wide. It descends at roughly 15 degrees. The floor is solid granite. The passage continues into it. The team lacks equipment to enter safely. The notation filed that day reads, "Passage descending to the south, extent unknown. A concrete block is installed. The record is closed." The record was filed in 1961. The seal has not been removed since. The Barabar Caves are 4 rock-cut chambers carved by order of Ashoka between approximately 272 and 232 BCE, designated for the Ajivaka religious sect. Oldest surviving rock-cut architecture in India. Completed before the Qin dynasty unified China, before the first Roman aqueducts, before Julius Caesar was born. Standing in continuous awareness for 2,300 years, what makes them extraordinary is not their age. The interior walls of the primary chambers, Sudama, Lomas Rishi, Karan Chaupar, Visvakarma, are polished to a mirror finish, not smooth to the touch, smooth at a level that goes beyond tactile perception. Vidula Jayaswal of Banaras Hindu University published findings in 2010 from scanning electron microscopy analysis of wall surface samples. No directional scoring, no tool marks in any direction at any scale. The finish is uniform at the molecular level, consistent with a chemical treatment or vibrational process that smooths the surface without leaving directional marks. Not consistent with any mechanical polishing method available in 250 BCE, or with any mechanical polishing method available today without industrial equipment. Ashoka's craftsmen were among the finest of their era. The Ashokan pillars, monolithic columns erected across the subcontinent, also show high-quality polish. The chamber walls show something beyond the pillars, something the pillars do not approach. The acoustic properties were documented by Dr. Miriam Kolar, who has studied ritual acoustics in rock-cut chambers across multiple continents. The Sudama cave produces a standing wave at approximately 97 to 108 Hz when a human voice chants in the chamber's resonant range. This frequency range overlaps with the resonance frequency measured at the oracle room of the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta, a chamber built 2,000 years before Barabar on the other side of the planet. At this frequency, neurological studies have documented measurable effects on brain activity. Deactivation of language processing centers, heightened susceptibility to altered states. 2 chambers, built by different civilizations on different continents at different points in history, arrived at the same acoustic frequency. Coincidence or pattern? In 2019, researchers from the Indian Institute of Technology Patna conducted a ground-penetrating radar survey of the Barabar Hills, including the area behind the concrete seal in the Lomas Rishi passage. The void spaces behind the seal extend at least 30 meters beyond the block. At 30 meters, the passage turns. The radar signal beyond the turn is consistent with an additional chamber or chambers. The IIT Patna team submitted the data to the Archaeological Survey of India and requested authorization to remove the seal. The ASI has not responded. The mainstream interpretation holds that the caves served their intended purpose, meditative space for Ajivika monks, and that the polishing technique represents the peak application of documented stoneworking. Methods. The passage seal reflects a standard 1961 inaccessibility classification not revisited due to competing conservation priorities. But some researchers ask, what is 30 meters behind a concrete block installed in 1961 that no one has been authorized to remove? The passage descends below the primary meditation chamber. It does not lead to any documented feature. The radar says something is there. The ASI has not answered. What connects the acoustic frequency engineered at Barabar in 250 BCE to the same frequency carved into limestone in Malta 5,000 years earlier? Why did Ashoka's engineers polish stone to a molecular level finish that cannot be replicated and then seal a passage below the chamber floor? And why 65 years after someone wrote, "Extent unknown," has no one been authorized to find out? From caves where mirror-smooth walls conceal a passage that radar confirms extends at least 30 meters further, we travel to a tunnel system so contested that the government has tried 3 times to make it legally cease to exist. Number 7. The Ravne Tunnel Labyrinth, Bosnia-Herzegovina. The year is 2006, and workers clearing the slopes of a hill outside Visoko, in central Bosnia, have broken through into a tunnel. The tunnel is not natural. The walls are parallel, the dimensions are consistent, the substrate shows tool marks, and the passage is filled with a secondary material, a dry, compact substance, different in composition from the surrounding earth, apparently deposited after the tunnel was constructed. Someone had dug these passages, and then someone had filled them in. The Bosnian Institute of Geology examined the tunnel system that year and issued a report making a specific finding. The Ravne passages are artificial. They are ancient. They were deliberately backfilled at some point after construction. The report did not speculate about who built them. It confirmed what was physically observable. These tunnels were made by human hands and then blocked. The tunnels were found during excavation work organized by Samir Osmanagic, a Bosnian-American businessman who had, in 2005, claimed that the hill above Visoko was a man-made pyramid, the largest ever built. The pyramid claim generated immediate controversy. Archaeologists across Europe rejected it. The European Association of Archaeologists called it a cruel hoax. The Bosnian Institute of Geology issued a halt order within 90 days of excavation beginning. Osmanagic continued. The pyramid claim is contested, and the experts contesting it have substantial reasons. But the pyramid claim is not what matters here. The tunnels are what matter. And the tunnels, unlike the pyramid, were confirmed. Carbon dating of organic material from the Ravne fill material produced dates from multiple independent laboratories ranging from approximately 15,000 to 26,000 BCE, depending on the organic sample tested. These dates remain disputed not because the laboratory results are questioned, but because dating the fill material establishes when organic matter was deposited, not necessarily when the tunnels were cut. No credible alternative explanation for dates in this range has been published. The dates exist. The tunnels exist. The fill was placed by someone. In 2010, researchers from the University of Tuzla conducted electromagnetic measurements inside the Ravne tunnel system, standard physical measurement of the underground environment. Their results: the concentration of negative ions inside the tunnels is 43 times higher than the average outdoor concentration in the surrounding region. Not a small variance. Not within the range of normal geological variation. No geological mechanism explaining this anomaly has been published. The elevated ion concentration is a measured physical fact with no identified cause. Inside the tunnels, excavation teams have uncovered large megalithic blocks placed at tunnel junctions. The blocks are precise. They fit the passage geometry, positioned consistently with either structural reinforcement, preventing collapse at branching points, or deliberate blockade, preventing access to specific sections. In 2011, a team working at 12 meters depth reached a stone block approximately 5 meters wide. On the upper surface, engravings. The foundation documented the block's existence in internal reports. The engravings have not been publicly photographed. No independent researcher, no archaeologist, no geologist, no member of any institution not affiliated with the foundation has been permitted to examine the block. Its existence is claimed. Its contents are unknown to anyone outside the organization that found it. A second government halt order came in 2008, restricting excavation in specific zones. The foundation continued in non-restricted areas. The Ravne tunnels remain in active excavation. Access to the deeper sections requires foundation permission, granted selectively. The mainstream position holds that the pyramid is a misidentified geological formation, that the tunnels are medieval mining infrastructure, and that the enterprise is pseudoscience. This position addresses the pyramid claim. It does not address the anomalous ion measurements. It does not address the carbon-dated fill material. It does not address the engraved block at 12 meters depth that no independent researcher has been allowed to see. What made someone fill in these tunnels with material and block their junctions with precisely positioned megalithic stones? What accounts for an electromagnetic anomaly 43 times above baseline with no geological explanation? And what is engraved on a stone block at 12 meters depth that has been seen by exactly one organization and photographed by none? From tunnels where an engraved block has been seen by one group and photographed by no one, we descend into a city beneath a city where a civilization built an urban infrastructure that a preservation order has ensured will never be fully revealed. Number 8. Mohenjo-daro, Pakistan. The tunnels beneath the dead city. The year is 1964, and UNESCO has issued a joint statement with the Pakistani government. All further excavation at Mohenjo-daro must stop. The official reason is structural preservation. The site had been under excavation since 1911. 50 years of exposure to air, moisture, and expanding salt crystals had damaged significant portions of what was uncovered. Any further digging would expose new surfaces to the same destructive process. The decision was defensible. The excavation stopped. It has not been resumed. Based on the best available survey data, what remains unexcavated represents approximately 70% of the total built environment. Mohenjo-daro peaked around 2500 BCE. Population: approximately 35,000 to 50,000 people, one of the largest urban concentrations on Earth at the time. Streets aligned to cardinal directions. Standard brick sizes used across the entire Indus Valley civilization. Bricks from sites 1,500 kilometers apart are the same dimensions. Approximately 700 wells. Beneath every major street, a covered drainage channel. Every household connected to the network. The sewage system of Mohenjo-daro was more sophisticated than most European cities as recently as 1500 CE. At the top of the citadel mound, the Great Bath, 12 meters long, 7 meters wide, 2.4 meters deep, waterproofed with 2 layers of fired brick set in gypsum mortar, and an outer layer of bitumen natural tar pressed between the brick courses. Bitumen sealed the basin from groundwater below and from the water above. The technology of combining fired brick with bitumen as a sealant would not appear again anywhere in the world for approximately 1,500 years. Beneath the citadel mound, excavators John Marshall and Ernest Mackay, who led the primary excavations from 1922 to 1931, documented passages they could not fully follow. Marshall's field notes, held at the British Library, include an entry for a passage on the southern side of the mound that descended at a slope until standing water prevented entry. The notation, passage descending to the south, direction consistent with connection to lower drainage network, could not be cleared due to standing water, extent unknown. Marshall also documented other passages. Some were classified as drainage channels, the standard interpretation, likely accurate for many. But the documented drainage channels at Mohenjo-daro are a specific standard dimension, approximately 30 to 45 centimeters wide, covered with removable brick slabs. The passages Marshall described as descending from the citadel were wider, wide enough for a person moving through, crouched. This does not appear in the public-facing summary of Marshall's work. It is in the field notes. In 2015, Dr. Qasid Malla of the University of Sindh and colleagues conducted a ground-penetrating radar survey across a 15-hectare section of the site, covering both excavated and unexcavated areas. The survey identified structural features, walls, floors, room boundaries at depths of 7 to 9 meters below the current surface across the entire surveyed area, including sections never excavated. The structures at depth match the pattern of the excavated city: grid, rooms, drainage channels, wells. The city continues underground in a state of preservation that 50 years of surface exposure have not touched. Approximately 30% of Mohenjo-daro has been seen. The other 70% is there, in the dark, intact. The city was abandoned around 1900 BCE. The reasons remain formally unresolved. No fire layer, no mass grave layer. No destruction horizon of the kind that marks conquest or plague. The city simply emptied, and the evidence suggests the emptying was organized. Most portable artifacts, tools, vessels, ornaments were removed before departure. The people left, but they packed. The drainage system continued to function after the population left. Water moved through the passages beneath empty streets for decades, possibly centuries, before the city was buried in silt. 70% of the infrastructure of a civilization that solved sanitation, standardized brick production, and waterproofed public pools 4,500 years ago is still underground. The passages beneath the citadel descend to levels where the water has long since receded. They could be entered today. They have not been. What is at the bottom of the passage that Marshall marked extent unknown in the late 1920s? What is in the 70% of the city that no excavator has ever seen? And what does it mean that a civilization capable of the Great Bath chose to leave, organized itself to leave, and left no record of why? From a city that chose to leave and took its secrets with it, we enter a passage tomb where builders aligned a small stone opening to within less than 1 degree of the midwinter sunrise, and to do it, they dismantled the largest standing stone the world has ever seen. Number 9. Gavrinis and the Grand Menhir Brise, Brittany, France. The year is 1983, and archaeologist Charles Tanguy Leroux is standing in the burial chamber of the Gavrinis Passage tomb on a small island in the Gulf of Morbihan, examining the underside of the capstone above his head. The capstone is a granite slab, weighing approximately 17 metric tons. Leroux is looking at its underside because the carvings there are not consistent with the rest of the tomb's visual program. The spirals and arc forms are present, but they are interrupted, cut off at the stone's edges, in a way that suggests the carved surface originally extended beyond the current boundaries of the stone. It was not carved as a capstone. It was carved as part of something larger, and then cut. He recognizes the interrupted pattern. He has seen it before. At Lac Mariaker, 4 kilometers away on the mainland, at the site of the broken Grand Menhir Brise. The Grand Menhir Brise, when intact, stood approximately 20 meters tall and weighed approximately 330 metric tons. A single piece of orthostat gneiss, quarried from a source roughly 10 kilometers from its standing location. 330 metric tons of stone moved 10 kilometers, and then raised upright by a Neolithic population with stone tools and wooden levers, larger than any single stone in Egypt, larger than anything at Stonehenge. The stone fell, or was felled, and broke into 4 pieces. Those pieces lie at Lac Mariaker today, except not all of them. Leroux's analysis, published in the Bulletin de la Société Préhistorique Française in 1984, established that the Gavrinis capstone is a 5th fragment of the Grand Menhir Brise. The carvings on its underside complete the carvings on the Lac Mariaker fragments, the same geometric patterns, the same scale, the same hand. 1 stone, 5 pieces. 3 pieces were used as capstones for 2 other passage tombs, the Table des Marchands and the Ergras tomb. The builders took the world's largest standing stone, broke it into pieces, and used the pieces to roof the dead. Not an accident, a project. The monolith was deliberately dismantled, and its parts distributed to 3 tombs. Whatever the Grand Menhir Brise meant, when standing as an astronomical marker, a territorial monument, a threshold to something with no modern category, the act of dismantling it and placing its pieces over the dead was a ritual statement whose meaning is not accessible to us. Someone decided that the world's largest standing stone should become the ceiling of tombs. They carried out that decision at the same scale and precision that had raised the stone in the first place. The Gavrinis Passage tomb itself, 14 meters from entrance to chamber. All but one of the 30 structural stones lining the passage are engraved on their inner faces. The outer faces, buried in the mound's stone fill, are not engraved. The engravings were for the passage, for whoever moved through it, for whatever was meant to move through it. The visual language encoded in those non-figurative patterns, arcs, spirals, U-forms, has not been decoded. It was read by people entering this passage for centuries. Then the tomb was sealed, and the reading stopped. In 2011 and 2012, the French Ministry of Culture conducted a geophysical survey between Gavrinis Island and the Lac Mariaker complex on the mainland. Ground-penetrating radar and seismic reflection equipment. The survey identified linear subsurface anomalies extending from the island toward the mainland at depths of 3 to 6 meters below the seabed. Not consistent with natural geological formations in this substrate, consistent with artificial structural features, walls, foundations, or passage elements. The ministry classified the survey results as a protected cultural heritage archive, pending comprehensive assessment. A 2012 ministry brief described linear features of potential cultural significance at depths of 3 to 6 meters, requiring further analysis. No further analysis has been published. The archive is not accessible to independent researchers. The assessment has not appeared. The Gulf of Morbihan was largely dry land during the early Neolithic, before Holocene sea level rise submerged it. The island of Gavrinis was a hill above a valley. Whatever the geophysical survey found between that hill and the mainland was built by people standing on land, not in water. Who decided to dismantle a 330 metric ton standing stone and distribute its fragments as tomb roofing across 3 separate monuments? What do the linear subsurface features between Gavrinis and the mainland represent, and why has the ministry's assessment not been released in more than a decade? And what information encoded in the non-figurative engraved patterns was meant to be read in torchlight for centuries and then sealed away? From a dismantled giant turned into floors for the dead, we descend to the most recently sealed tunnel on this list, where a 2017 discovery caused a press release and a 48-hour retraction, and no one has published what was in the last room. Number 10. Teotihuacan, the tunnel beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. The year is 2003, and a robotic camera lowered into a drainage sump beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent at Teotihuacan has found something that was not supposed to be there. The camera was not looking for a tunnel. The drainage sump was a standard archaeological feature. But when the camera's light reached the sump floor, the floor was not there. A layer of pale mineral material blocked a dark opening. The layer was analyzed. It was mica. Mica has no geological source within 300 kilometers of Teotihuacan. The nearest deposits are in Oaxaca, 300 kilometers to the south, or in Brazil. Someone had brought mica from at least 300 kilometers away, specifically to create this seal, approximately 1,800 years ago, around 200 CE, and the seal had held. Nothing had entered or left in the 18th centuries since. Archaeologist Sergio Gómez Chávez of Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History requested permission to excavate. Permission was granted. Excavation began in 2009. The tunnel is 103 meters long. The entrance shaft descends 15 meters below the plaza surface. The floor drops further over the tunnel's length, reaching 18 meters at the far end, approximately 1.8 meters wide, 2 meters high throughout, straight, parallel walls. Built, used, sealed, and waiting. The floor was not plain stone, coated with approximately 1 centimeter of iron pyrite powder. Pyrite catches and scatters light from every angle. The walls showed traces of hematite, a red iron oxide pigment. In torchlight, the floor would have shimmered. The walls would have glowed. Moving through this passage in firelight would have felt like moving through a passage full of stars. It took 9 years to excavate the full length. The fill had to be sifted by hand, layer by layer, because what it contained was extraordinary. Over the 9-year excavation, Gómez Chávez's team recovered more than 75,000 artifacts. Jade figurines, pyrite mirrors polished to reflective flatness, obsidian blades still capable of cutting, rubber balls, jaguar and puma bones, feline skin fragments, seeds, fragments of human skin and hair consistent with offerings, and 4 intact wooden boxes. The boxes were described in the 2017 excavation report as containing materials of a composition requiring further analysis before public disclosure. In October 2017, Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History issued a press release. The terminal chamber findings suggested the tunnel served as a symbolic representation of the underworld and may have contained the remains of the city's founders. The terminal chamber was described as the most significant discovery at the site since excavations began. The language implied that the specific contents, the end point of a 103-meter passage under the most sacred structure in the most powerful city in pre-Columbian North America, were consistent with something that would reframe the interpretation of Teotihuacan. 48 hours later, the Institute issued a correction. The original press release had been premature. The findings were preliminary and subject to ongoing analysis. No further details were appropriate to share at that time. No further details have been shared since. No publication of the terminal chamber's specific contents has appeared in any academic journal, institutional report, or public document. Access to the terminal chamber was restricted in late 2017. The Gómez Chávez team holds the only access authorization. No independent researcher has entered. The mainstream interpretation holds that the tunnel was a symbolic representation of the Teotihuacan creation narrative, the underworld from which the gods emerged at the beginning of the current world. The mica and pyrite were theatrical elements for ritual use. The 75,000 artifacts represent offerings. The terminal chamber contains the cosmological focus of the structure. But some researchers ask whether a purely theatrical space requires a mica seal sourced from 300 kilometers away. Whether a symbolic chamber requires a 48-hour retraction. And what, specifically, was in the 4 wooden boxes that could not be disclosed before further analysis and has not been disclosed after 7 more years of it. We have descended through 10 tunnels. Peru, where people entered the Chinkana and did not come back. Ecuador, where Neil Armstrong spent 2 months underground and came back without the answer. Thailand, where the world watched a rescue and no one watched what came after. Peru again, where bodies were found face down in passages sealed since 2001. Peru a third time, where an impossible doorway leads into an impossible chamber in rock too hard to carve. India, where mirror-smooth walls cover a passage that radar says extends at least 30 meters further. Bosnia, where an engraved block has been seen by one group and photographed by none. Pakistan, where a city of 50,000 people emptied itself in a way that looked like a decision. France, where the world's largest standing stone was broken into pieces and used to roof the dead, and where a government survey found something beneath the water and sealed the results. And Mexico, where a tunnel full of stars was sealed and then resealed, and the press release was retracted, and no one has published what was in the last room. 10 tunnels, 10 stop orders. The same pattern on 5 continents across 15,000 years. Something down there keeps getting found, and something keeps deciding we should not see it yet. Subscribe if you want to keep descending. Like if something here changed what you thought was possible, and leave a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from.